speech since he sent the letter to the American people on Sunday, announcing that he will step aside from running against Donald Trump in the election in November. He endorsed Kamala Harris, and tonight he gave sort of his first public speech. It lasted just over 10 minutes. I watched it on ABC. I thought the speech itself was good. I thought it was sad in a way, but I also thought it was incredibly appropriate and presidential. And I think those are things that we miss seeing, especially in the last 8 to 10 years. What were your takeaways?
Not a Joe Biden fan at all. I think he is the second worst president in my lifetime. I'm 43, you're older, but in my lifetime, I think he is the worst president that we have had when it comes to everything that's happened in the world, from the withdrawal with Afghanistan to the continuation of failed COVID policies to the diplomacy early on in Ukraine to what's happened in Israel. I think it's just been failure after failure after failure. That being said, I was sad a little bit. Not sad that he's leaving, but sad when you hear a man talk about, hey, this was my life's dream. You know, he leans in hard to the stuttering thing, and I can certainly understand that, and overcoming, and, you know, just a kid from Scranton and Delaware and all these other places that he's from. It kind of reminds me of Bass. You know, Bass is from Texas and Memphis and all these things. That's Joe Biden. But I was sad. Now, I had to remind myself, he has been in public office for 50 years, and he's worth a lot of money. He hasn't made that much money in public office, right? So, I mean, there are some things about Biden that are very concerning. But if you just take the speech for what it was, I thought it was better delivered than I anticipated. Obviously, there were speech writers and things like that, but I thought he delivered it pretty well. He stumbled a couple of times, but if you've paid attention to Joe Biden or done a deep dive into Joe Biden, he's done that his whole life. Now, the Joe Biden of the 1990s was, he would give huge speeches on the Senate floor and all of these things. He's not the same man. He is an elderly man who is at the end of it, and he was probably forced, and we'll talk about that later, to step aside. But that's never easy. That's never easy. It doesn't matter what you do. That's not easy. And so for those parts, I did feel sad too. Thought it was a good speech. Thought it was a perfect amount of time. No need for him talking to hours. He's not closing out the RNC. No need to do that. He covered every base that he needed to cover to get his point across, I felt.
I'll get to the tenor of this speech in a minute. But I do want to ask you a couple questions. Like you mentioned all of these abject failures. Mm-hmm. I think there is another part of people who really, a part of society, I guess, who believe that he did his policies were very good, that he passed a lot of good policies. The Afghanistan situation was terrible. Everybody can acknowledge that. The COVID policies you mentioned, what are some of those things that he did?
So,
I guess
no president ever in the history of our country has spent more than Donald Trump did. A lot of his expenditures in 4 years were for COVID, the mailbox money from PPP loans to what do they call it, stimulus, things like that. I believe Trump spent around $7.8 trillion in 4 years. That's never been matched in our country's history. But Joe Biden spent about 5.2 of it. The thing that I will say about Joe Biden, and I understand that they were, you hear these words, trying to get us out of pandemic, but there were already news reports about, a small church in Florida who took this loan money and bought a plane. I mean, crazy stuff already coming out like that should have been stopped, right? The stimulus money, jobs were opening back up. People were going to work. That should have been stopped. We still weren't. People were creating businesses, just literally going on to you and I live in Tennessee. You can go on the state of Tennessee.com right now or .org, whatever it is, right now, .gov, I'm sorry, and register a business. You can get an EIN number in less than 5 minutes. People were using that to get this money. It was still bastardized, and I feel like enough time had passed to where That had to stop. I mean, we're talking billions with a B kind of money, right? So that is what I look at is failed. It's a continuation of a failed policy.
Those are all anomalies, right? The vast majority of people who needed money needed that. It did happen, but the vast majority, like all of these things, when you are passing out large amounts of anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you are cooking large amounts of food for people, the food's not going to taste as good as if you're cooking it for 3, right? They're just gaps you got to fill in. The majority of people are going to like it. You're always going to have 2 or 3 at the table who stick up their nose and say, oh, I could have gotten a better meal at such and such, such. But for the most part, that food is sustenance and it did its job. That's the same way with money. Like we can pick and nitpick at the people who abuse this, just like you can the welfare system. Obviously, you're always going to have those things. But the vast majority of the money that got sent out were people who needed it, who didn't have jobs.
We're $34 trillion in debt. The past 2 presidents over the past 8 years, that 8 years of your life, they've added over $12.8 trillion between the two. There is no way we can ever pay it back. We have $1 trillion in debt services. I'm getting really, really tired. I said this today on my radio program. We get the government we deserve. We get the government we deserve. You send non-serious people there to handle very serious things. It has been 17 years. 2007 was the very last time we had anybody in the House of Representatives, Republicans or Democrats or any combination thereof, even attempt to balance a budget. You can say, well, this is just on a mass production scale and some bad things happen. We can't afford for bad things to continue to happen. $1 trillion.
Wait, are we still talking about COVID or are we talking about debt? Like, which one are you talking about?
Well, it's both. Okay, so 12 point. I mean, I don't know when you're talking about money sent out that we didn't have that we printed.
All right. Well, look. Bang on something because COVID. You have to get money out when the government ordered people's jobs shut down. They got to give them money. They got to pay them. Okay, so let's put that to the side. What are some other things that we like in the person you were going to vote for in a few months? You just said he spent more money and added more to the debt than anybody else.
An abject failure. An abject failure.
What are some things?
When it comes to the handling of COVID.
What are some things? Okay, all right. Well, let's just take out the COVID part because COVID wasn't around the whole time, right? We were still spending more than we were bringing in.
Of that 7.8 trillion, 5 point something, almost 6, a little under 6 was spent post-COVID, right? So you're talking about $1 trillion in 3 years.
Right. Well, here's what we can connect this next thing to, and this is something that Biden gets blamed for, and I don't know how fair it is. Anybody who's sitting in that position would get blamed for this, but all of that money that was pumped into the economy, more by Trump from COVID than Biden, at some point you're going to have inflation because of that, period. There's no avoiding it. You can't avoid that. All right.
Right. We print the money. It's not backed by anything.
Yeah. You funnel free money into a consumer base. Obviously, they're going to spend it, and they're going to spend it wildly and recklessly, more than likely in some cases, especially the people who didn't need it. And then you're going to get inflation. So he took the hit for that, right? And I saw something posted on social media. Inflation has been consistently coming down for a while now, right? Mm-hmm. Inflation. Now, people all the time, because they either don't pay attention or they've already got their mind made up, they confuse prices with inflation. Those two things aren't the same. So I saw some guy said, somebody told me when prices started going down. Prices aren't going down, right? The rate at which they are going up is slowing down. It has been for a while now, for a long time, okay? It's consistently dropping. Shit's still high, right? Yeah. So I think something he did well, or as well as he could, is somehow we weathered the storm of all of that. We've got a really strong economy. Stock market hit record levels, which I heard tons of Trump supporters bitching about that when he left office, and they credited him for like my stock and retirement's never been higher. And Biden, blah, blah, blah. Well, then Biden surpasses that. So I think he needs to get more credit than he deserves. I think he takes the blame for a lot of shit. I think he weathered the storm better than I expected him to, and definitely better than he presents, if that makes sense. I don't think he communicated what he did strong or very well throughout his time in office.
That very well may be some of it, because you're 100% right with the stock market. It's a weak way to say, look at the stock market when Trump was in office, and then look at it now when we went over 40,000 just a couple of months ago, breaking records, right? So I can agree with you there. Now, when it comes to inflation, yes, Trump would have to deal with it too, and he would have to deal with the mess that he made. I'm not convinced that it wouldn't be handled better. I'm not convinced that, because I'm a believer of inflation, shrinkflation, and greedflation, and all three of them coming together. We've seen record profits from Kroger, from Publix, to, I mean, there's all these different companies. I don't have the list in front of me right now. They're at record profits right now. We always bitch about oil companies when they're at record profits. I do think that there would have been a different approach. Right. I do think that Trump would have had, I can't tell you what that approach would be because I'd just be guessing, but I do think that there would have been a different approach from it when it comes to dealing with that. Now, the biggest problem I have is the Afghanistan withdrawal. The withdrawal in Afghanistan was totally blundered. Now, do I think that Joe Biden made every decision like that on his own? No, I'm sure he consulted with military advisors and all of it, but at some point, you have to wear it. We're not voting for your military advisors, right? We're not voting for these people. You appoint these people. Somebody has to wear it, okay? It was a huge abysmal failure, one of the biggest failures in American military history. I do subscribe to the belief that failure, that abject failure, did embolden Vladimir Putin to go into Ukraine. Under the Obama administration, he went into Crimea, took it over. He didn't do anything for 4 years. And then with the Biden administration, post the Afghanistan withdrawal, he went into Ukraine. That hasn't helped with inflation either.
Do you think that's is that correlation or causation? Those two, do you think those two things are connected? And if you do, how, why do you think that?
Well, I think that that
just your opinion, or is it, did you have did you read that somewhere, or are you just putting things together?
Well, no, I'm not the only human being that thinks it, but no, no one from the Biden camp has come out and said, holy shit, we just talked to Putin and he said he'd have never done this had the Afghanistan withdrawal not been as botched as it was, right? So no, technically, from a factual standpoint, no one from his office has said that. Now, just from me being alive and looking at things that we do know versus we don't know, I'd say that probably did embolden them to go into Ukraine because they wanted to go into Ukraine to to get the band back together with the original Soviet Union. They still believe, especially that eastern portion of Ukraine is still part of Russia, right? There's still Russian speaking citizens there. I mean, there is a difference. I do believe with that. Now, the money we spend in Ukraine, which I know some Republicans are very comfortable now saying shouldn't spend it. They're not NATO, shouldn't spend it. I think Vladimir Putin is a killer. I think Vladimir Putin is to not be trusted. And I think that if we can stop Vladimir Putin with Ukrainian lives, it's better than in the future having to stop Vladimir Putin with American lives. So I'm a Republican who believes that. I'm not a big war guy, but I do think, okay, we've got to do something.
Yeah. But bringing the focus back to this a little bit, because I do know, obviously, the way things play out in the world affect America. A lot of these things that are happening, I don't want to say are hypotheticals in the future, right? Mm-hmm. But the things that we know and that have happened and that are sort of under our control. And I've never been one to subscribe to jobs created. I don't like that. I don't like that stat. Both sides use it all the time, right? All the time. Jobs lost, jobs created. It doesn't matter how many jobs you create. What are the wages of those jobs you are creating? Are you creating jobs that have livable wages for people? All right. That being said, Trump campaign, when he was president from 16 to 20, always talked about the amount of jobs created. And then obviously COVID. I hate when I see the left say, all the jobs that were lost during Donald Trump's presidency. Look, there was a pandemic. Of course it's going to be slanted. On the flip side of that, jobs created. A lot of those jobs were created, brought back from people who were unemployed. Jobs. So now that being said, there were more above that created. Okay. So I think there is a narrative out there that says, well, the jobs were lost because of COVID. He just replaced those jobs, and it's a break even. It's not a break even. He created more jobs even beyond that. But I do believe like those things are these things that affect the American people, the economy. Inflation is inflation. You've said that you think Trump would have taken a different approach. I think we all are waiting for the Federal Reserve to do something different other than raising interest rates, because historically that has been what slowed inflation. But for whatever reason, it didn't this time. People just kept spending money. So I think they banked on what had worked in the past, and it just didn't work this time.
Yeah. So Biden never reached out to Janet Yellen at the Fed, right? He never reached out to her. Donald Trump did talk to Janet Yellen at the Fed. I think that's a misstep. The Fed is not part of the government. It's like saying Regions Bank or InSouth Bank. They just gave it a really cool name when they created it. It's a damn bank, all right? It's a huge joke. The last dude to talk about that lost his head in Dallas, but the Fed is a joke. The jobs thing is interesting. The infrastructure bill has been good for the economy. I'm not convinced that it's good for the country long term, but I'm also not convinced that it's not. Okay, so don't. I'm not trying to rip on it here. A lot of jobs that were creative. I know something, or one of the things that concerns a lot of people on the right when you're talking about these jobs, even if you pull the bounce back jobs out of it, which are the ones that you didn't work during COVID, then you went back. You pull them out of it, numbers are still good. The amount of governmental jobs that were created, right? That is because that will be a perpetual burden is not the right term here, because if they're governmental jobs that are needed, that's fine. But if they're governmental jobs that are created that may or may not be needed long term, if that's the case, then it becomes a burden, right? It becomes a burden on the taxpayer. A lot of conservatives talk about the number of conservative jobs created, but we do have everybody that wants a job in the country right now can find one. Everybody. There's more jobs than there are. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing for businesses, but it's a good thing for the country.
I was going to say the infrastructure bill, I think, is good. It's good. I mean, it had to happen. Like, you had to put money. Ask the people who travel on the bridge I-55 between Arkansas and Memphis. Like, Tennessee's not going to pay for that. We need that money. Broadband access for rural communities. That's a big deal. I worked in Haywood County. A lot of our families still in 2021 didn't have that. Because of this bill and this money, they have that now. Like, these are things that have to happen. And so you've got to spend money for them to happen, and people have to do them. I don't know how you – I don't know any other way to do that.
Yeah, like I said, there's not everything. There's no president, if you're being honest with yourself, there's no president that you hate every policy that they are a part of, or you love every policy that they're a part of, right? There's no such thing. And if there is, that just means you're not paying attention, right? It's impossible to agree with someone 100% of the time. I still go back to the geopolitical failures, what I deem to be failures, the geopolitical failures of the Biden administration for a lot of how I judge him as a president. I mean, I would really crank down hard on the spending, but I'll be damned. I mean, they all from Bush on, the Obama bail. I mean, all of that. I mean, they spend so much. I mean, that's getting nitpicky because both sides are so filthy when it comes to that. But his, he had ran on this, I'm going to look Putin in the eyes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I've been here. I've done that. These people know me. They respect me. And it's been quite the opposite. It's been quite the opposite. So I deem that as a failure. His debate performance against Donald Trump a few weeks ago, obviously a huge failure. Obviously a huge reason and a huge part of why tonight happened was because of that debate failure with there. Now, let me ask you this, because I thought whoever wrote a speech, him, whoever else helped him, wrote a speech. The most damning part for November was when he talked about democracy and the idea of America is bigger than, kings and stuff. And it's funny. I wanted to watch, just so I'd be prepared to argue with you. I watched the coverage on CNN, and I heard Van Jones, who's also from Jackson, Tennessee, heard Van Jones talking afterwards. And he said, here you are, you have a man who didn't want to leave, but did for the country. And I thought this is the most damning statement of the night. It wasn't in the speech. He said, 4 years ago, we had a man who didn't win and was asked to leave and didn't. I thought that was a really damning statement. When you are to look at this, and as politics often are, how things are reframed, Joe Biden stepping down, right? I don't want to. I just can't anymore. And I don't want to. And they're making me probably, right? Do I think he came to this decision on his own? Probably not. I mean, there were enough people speaking out against him that he probably felt like he had to, but he did it. It doesn't matter how he got there. He did it. If the Democratic Party can keep hitting that message as someone who is voting for Donald Trump, unless something crazy happens in the next few months, and the way this past month has been, something very crazy may happen in the next few months. But as someone who is voting for Donald Trump, I will say this. It's pretty scary because you can sell that. You can sell that. This man didn't want to step down, and he did. This guy got voted out, and he didn't want to leave. I mean, it's two very different things. If I'm looking at, how the rest of the country could perceive that, especially those swing states, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, it's a pretty good line to put on a postcard.
So you think it's damning for Trump?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Look, there's nothing he said that wasn't true. Like that's the truth. Now, here's the deal. And this is the thing, right? Biden stepped down because the noise got so loud from the outside. Now, we can talk about the process, the official process from the Democratic Party, which I don't agree with. I think this should have been opened up into primaries or something, public discussions or delegate or I don't know how this would work. And I listened to something on NPR today, and I think the DNC just said, listen, we're going to take the risk. This is going to be a high wire balancing act from now until November. We're going to take this risk because we think if we open it up, it would be complete chaos. And we can't afford that to happen. So we're going to do this. This isn't a good look, but we're going to place Vice President Harris in this position, and we're not going to give the people a say in it. But
doesn't feel like democracy.
No, it doesn't. But Biden stepping aside, regardless of whether he was quote unquote forced out, whatever, I do think it was his decision in the end. I think he was pressured greatly to make that decision. I think the pressure, though, came from leaders because it came from people first, right? After that debate, people stopped giving money, okay? If people, voters kept giving money, nobody's moving. If they still see that support, the leadership in the DNC still sees that support, nobody's pressuring Biden to drop out. The people said, this isn't going to work. The people who were going, me included, right? I don't know who, I wasn't going to vote on principle for Biden because I was pissed that he wasn't stepping away after this. And I was pissed that he wasn't stepping away, not because, like I said, I didn't like his policies, but because I thought as an American, as someone who voted for Biden in 2020 and Democrat all the way back until, to 2004, I thought we were handing the presidency to Donald Trump because he was being a stubborn old man. And I was mad. And I was like, that's not how this should work. And so I wasn't going to vote for Trump, but also wasn't going to vote for Biden at that point. Him stepping aside, even though he personally didn't want to, he said it was done for the unity of the party and to save democracy, quote unquote. Vice President Harris gives them a better chance to win now. I don't know that I think she is the person to handle Trump as well as maybe some other candidates who might have been on a ballot had we had a primary, but this is where we are. And I do think Biden willingly stepping away is a polar opposite move than what Trump would have done in that situation. And I think the way he tried to hang on to power, and he still questions the election. 4 years later, he still does it. Compared to what Biden just did, I think it's a reflection on who they are as people. And that's why I said this speech felt very presidential. I miss looking at a president, Republican or Democrat, and thinking, damn, like that's a person worthy of my respect regardless. I never had it for Trump because he's an asshole. I didn't have it for Biden towards the end because he wasn't presenting himself, I thought, like a president should. And he was also being stubborn about doing what was best for the country until he did it tonight. Well, Sunday, and then verbalized it tonight. I miss having a president that I respect.
I said earlier that Joe Biden was the second worst president of my lifetime. And you never asked me who the worst was, but I'll tell you, I think it was George W. Bush. And from the Iraq War to the spending to everything else, I do think that he was the worst president of my lifetime. And I don't think that's an anti-Republican thing to say. I think Republicans that pay attention, especially now that Donald Trump said it, can say that out loud. I thought it during the time. It's like, this guy's not good. That being said, after 9/11, that was a presidential moment from a man who, was usually the butt end of a joke on a late night show Monday through Friday, right? That was a presidential moment. Barack Obama, who I never voted for, was eat up with charisma. I think some of his spending was terrible. I think a lot of things he did was terrible. The man could deliver a speech. It could feel like he had the gift to feel like he was talking to you. You didn't get that much with Trump. It's the biggest thing I hate about it. I was so hopeful for his speech last Thursday at the convention. I thought he woefully underdelivered a golden opportunity. Had he talked for 10 minutes tonight like Joe Biden, I don't think Kamala Harris has a chance. That Monday night when he walked out, he didn't, Lee Greenwood was playing. Hell, I think Lee Greenwood was still talking at that time. Someone needs to tell that talented shrew to shut up and just sing your song. But when he walked out and he kind of, waved to the crowd and stuff, it's like, yeah, this has a chance to be really, really special. And then it turned into something that it didn't. Here's what I appreciate about Joe Biden. I appreciated that he tried to talk to Americans. Americans were good. We're good people. He didn't say Democrats were good. He didn't say, all of these taglines. He said Americans were good people at the end. We don't hear that enough. I'm extremely frustrated because of that. I was a huge Vivek Ramaswamy guy. I still am. If Trump, says enough stupid stuff between now and November, I'll write him in. It's a real easy thing to do in a state like Tennessee. That doesn't matter at all because Trump's going to win this state. And my plan and my intention is to vote for Trump. But, man, he doesn't talk to the people at all. He talks to the base. And the more base talk we do, the less we can grow as a country. And so I do think Joe Biden did a pretty decent job or at least attempted to do a pretty decent job of that tonight.
I think the two-party system has been ripe for some type of infestation to happen to where it exposes the worst of it, right? Like the worst case scenario of a two-party system. Like there's been rumblings of it for a long time, and then it just got like splayed open, I think, after 2016. Putting policy aside, a lot of Trump's policy I don't agree with, period. I think it's based in a lot of misogyny, xenophobia, all of those things, all of those things that he echoes through his narratives. I think if you look at the way that he speaks publicly, I think it is a direct connection to the way that discourse around politics has completely gone to shit in the last 8 years. I think that we've somehow allowed ourselves collectively to be swayed by that. And we think it's normal now. We think having somebody like Donald Trump in the highest office in America is normal. And that shit's not normal. It's not. The things, Chuck, you and I are the same age, roughly, a little bit older. You think about the way we thought of presidents, even when we were in middle school and high school, even, right? Like old enough to understand and kind of keep up with what was going on, right? Like president was like, oh shit. Like I remember my parents, I'm pretty sure were Republican when I was a kid, but Bill Clinton and Al Gore came to the airport in Jackson in 96, my senior year. And my dad and he took me out there because he wanted me to see President Clinton. I don't think he voted for Bill Clinton in 92 or whenever. Yeah. When did he get 92?
Yes. 92. Yeah, 92.
96. I don't know if he voted for 96, but we went out there to see him because that was a big damn deal that the president was coming to your airport, right? And I'm sure he was there because of Al Gore and all that. But and there was a lot of respect there, regardless of, and there were tons of people at the airport, Republicans, Democrats, because the president was there. And we've lost that somehow. And there's no way of like you can't put it any other way. This is on Donald Trump. Like the way he presents and speaks, right? Like
I don't know. Yeah, yes, I want to say some yes, but I think it also freaked a lot of people out that Barack Obama was black. I'll be honest with you. Never freaked me out. I didn't like his bailout bills. I didn't like some of his policies, the wedding bombings, the things like that. Didn't like. Never bothered me that he was black. Hell, I still think if I had to pick one president to go have a beer with, it would by far be Barack Obama, right? He just seems cool. That freaked people out. It does pave a way for some
but
of
he
that.
can't do anything. He can't do anything by being black.
No. I'm talking about to get people fired up to kind of blaze a trail, so to speak, for somebody else. Because inherently, Donald Trump's not racist. He's not homophobic. I don't know. He's a little xenophobic. I will give you.
How do you know? How do you know Donald Trump's not racist?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Look around.
No, I'm asking.
You've known about Donald Trump for 40 or 50 years. The parties he's thrown, the events that he's gone to, the people that have worked for him. They're like, oh, they're all white guys. No, they're not. You'll find African Americans. You'll find people of Latin descent. You'll find all of, and I'm not talking about cutting the.
Oh my God!
To act like it that he
Stop.
whatever bigotry that you may have, not you personally, but you may have, I think you can find that in him, right? You can find that in Donald Trump. Oh, he said this and this is what he meant. He's playing to a crowd. He is playing to a base level crowd with a lot of his stuff.
Whew. Your explanation was essentially the same as I'm not racist. I've got a black buddy over here. I'm not racist. I voted for Barack Obama. Trump's not racist.
I mean, what are you asking me for? You said
he employs minorities. No, let's talk about what racism is. Okay. You can be friends with a person who is a minority and still be a hell of a racist, right? It's about how you collectively look at a group of people. And you can say Trump's talking to a base, but in the 1980s with the Central Park Five, he wasn't talking to a base. He was a millionaire in New York, and that motherfucker was a racist asshole. Period.
He wanted them murdered. They were found. Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
And the things he said about them, and the way he speaks about minorities now in his stump speeches, right? This is not something that's come out of nowhere since he's come on the public scene to run for president. He has been this his whole life. Like you can be a racist and employ minorities in your group. Like period. He may not be waving a Nazi flag, but he can have predisposed ideas about groups of people and then communicate those things out loud to them and even try to have them prosecuted because they fit a certain stereotype in his mind that is dangerous.
So you're saying you wouldn't vote for a racist?
I didn't say that. I said Donald Trump's a racist. That's not why I don't vote for him. That's one of the reasons.
Because I'm going to break your heart. I don't know if you've heard the Biden tapes, right, where he uses the N-word and all this. I mean, so we're talking about the 70s, 80s, and we've gotten off track here. I would contend to you that the things that certain sects, S-E-C-T-S, certain sects of MAGA get caught up with, Donald Trump doesn't care about those things, right? From the homophobia stuff. I mean, Donald Trump's had
religion,
people in drag, Christianity. He doesn't give a damn about that. Homophobia stuff. He's had drag shows at buildings that he's on. He's done all this stuff. None of this stuff bothers him, right? None of this stuff bothers. That's my bigger point with it. Now, the people themselves, they may hear something say, "Yeah, this finally somebody who finally said it." I mean, I get that, but I think he's at that point he's talking to a base. I really do.
Who was he talking to in the 80s and 90s?
I mean, then you got to start classes. The Central Park 5 thing is, I'm aware of that.
And you don't, because what I'm doing, and Biden may have said that, but nothing about what he says now reflects any of that.
Right.
So was there a change? Is he smart enough to figure it out? I'm not going to be like, I know for sure he's not a racist. I'm assuming based on what I've seen in policy and the things that he says out loud that he's not. Trump? No, I don't, because historically everything is all. Look, you love consistency, all right? That Joker's been consistent as far as on that stuff. He has been consistent.
He wanted a Muslim ban. Could be racist, right? He wanted a Muslim ban. Called it the China virus. He's 100% right about that. But he called it the China virus. I mean, where are some examples other than those two? Where are some examples of this overt racism? Don't bring up Charlottesville.
Why not bring up Charlottesville?
When he said, because everyone uses one edited clip one time.
Stand up, stand down. I wasn't going to use that. I was going to speak to how police used to treat people back in the day, right? When police brutality, mainly against African Americans, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one. Like there are countless examples of the way that he speaks, dog whistle, however it is, where he knows that certain people will pick up on that, and he's going to do it. And maybe that's to his base, right? But when you want to ban Muslims,
stand by and stand down or something like that, I remember people
stand by and stand down. I don't know.
Yeah, people freaked out over that.
Right.
I don't know if it was dog whistling, but evidently something.
Yeah. But but no, there's a history of all of those things. Like you just said it. Like I don't know, even if you stop there, like how else do you explain it? Even his refusal, and this is something little that you and I as white people probably don't understand as much. I understand it because I've taught a lot of minorities, and it's a big deal. When he intentionally mispronounces Vice President Harris's first name, right? Because he knows that's a rise. That's racist. That is a racist thing to do, because something like that is extremely important to minorities, right? Usually those names are not names that you and I would name our children, or where our friends aren't named that. Mm-hmm. You see something like that written down. I know every day I call roll for the first time. I'm like, hey, I want to make sure I get your name right. I know that's a big deal. That's important. And if I mess it up, I apologize. And I mess it up a few times, and I finally get it right. So I try to. But like those little things right there that a lot of people aren't aware of, he knows. He knows what he does. Like that is an example of racism.
Her name is Kamala, right? Not Kamala. It is Kamala.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You could understand, if you weren't familiar with it before, how you could mess it up unintentionally. That's not racist, right?
Sure. One time, I've messed up names. And I'm like, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or a couple of times. Right? Because I asked you, I was pretty sure it's Kamala because I've heard it enough now, especially in the past couple of weeks. But, I want to ask you this. All right, so we're on racism. Here's what I've seen on my feed, especially from some of my African-American friends on social media. Here's what I've seen. They said, it's just a simple post. I stand with black women. That's it. Well, hell, I do too, I think, right? I mean, I want black women to have everything they want in their life. Mm-hmm. But does that mean you get a presidential vote because you're a black woman? Does that mean I'm a bigot if I don't vote for him? I'm a racist? What does that mean?
I don't know. I'm not them. I don't know what it means to them. I think people vote for a lot. Look, man, if somebody wants to vote, if a person wants to vote for Vice President Harris because they see something of her in themselves, or they see something in her that they know their mom and grandmom was never able to even sniff because of opportunity, and they say, that's why I want to vote for her. I want to see myself represented, and the generations before me who couldn't work, who couldn't own their own property, be represented finally at the head of this table. That's, for me, I don't give a shit if that's why they vote for her. Yes, that's
dear God, you should.
Because on the other side of that, we have people who are voting for one issue, and that's abort or whatever it is. It's a one issue thing. Chuck, let's be honest. 80% of people who come out in elections probably vote on one issue, right? So if they want to say, I stand with black women and that's why I vote for Kamala Harris, okay, I give that just as much credence as I give the one person who I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because I don't want babies aborted at nine months, which, by the way, was never an issue. But that's just
the other day. It's so unfortunate. I'm like, guys, look, I'm pro-choice too, but we weren't killing babies 3 months after they were born. We weren't killing babies the minute they were, but that was never happening. And I'm pro I'm pro-life. I said pro-choice. I misspoke. I'm pro-life, but come on, like let's just. There's enough factual information. All right, I want to ask about this. So you hit on it real quick earlier. You hit on it. You said the way that the DNC decided to do this, right? To move, the votes for Joe Biden to hell. Now I can't say her name. I'm scared to say Kamala, right? It's Kamala Harris. Or you got me nervous for a minute. To move them over without really any public say. Everybody that cast a vote there that Biden got cast it for Joe Biden. What about her? What is it that makes her deserving of a vote or electable? I had this argument today on my radio show with a caller, and they said, "Well, what made Trump electable in 2016?" And I was like, "But he hadn't been in office, right?" To me, like Mark Cuban, a person I like. If Mark Cuban was running on the Democratic ticket, I'd vote for Mark Cuban in a heartbeat. I would, right? I'm a Republican. I'm going to vote for Mark Cuban. Trump. We didn't have any political history with Donald Trump when he ran for president in 2016. So you were literally taking him on his word. Okay, he's a business person. He's got this idea, wrote the art of the deal, like all this stuff that, whatever reason that got people to vote for him, that's what it was. But we do have a political track record with Kamala Harris, and it's not a good one. It's not a good one at all. Like, where is this excitement? And I believe that it's there. Where is this excitement for her coming from?
I'll answer in a couple ways, but first, tell me, what is her track record as the vice president that's been bad?
Well, you remember Joe Biden, the president, when he said that Kamala Harris was going to be in charge of the border. You remember that?
Yes.
I would suggest to you that the border ain't going well.
I don't think the border is going as bad as the narrative about it is. All right. So this is a thing. All right. Now we can look, there's obviously an issue with it, the vetting. Now, what's turned into people just coming over into this, people have taken their imaginations and they have spun a lot of shit. Fox News being one, talking about migrant crime. And that's Trump's caught on to that. That is something like CRT was 4 years ago in Tennessee. Where did that shit come from? Right? We know we have a lot of migrants, right? Migrant crime is not really a thing. If you look at data,
it is. There are people who have been raped and murdered. Some of the families spoke at the RNC. I mean, I know you'd say there's people raped and murdered every day, but that's not migrant. I mean, to define migrant crime, that's how we would do it, would we not?
But you wouldn't give as much attention. The RNC wouldn't host an American family who had a person raped and killed by another American speak at their convention. And that's the difference. Period. Because migrant crime does not happen at near the rate American crime happens at all.
They had a lady speak whose son was in the military and was murdered by someone because a DA, maybe it was Alvin Bragg, maybe it's a different DA, had a weak bail system, right? Cashless bail system. Guy got out, should have been in jail, got out, killed her son, right? Something like that. So I mean, yes, there were people who spoke about crime of all kinds. Now, migrant crime is yes, that was the focus on an open border. $12 million was cut from the Denver Police Department this year, so they would have more money to deal with the migrants there in Denver. That's not a good thing for the people of Denver. I'm not saying that's crime. I'm saying that is an adjustment. I would suggest to you, and this may be just a difference of opinion that we have. I would suggest to you that the border is a problem right now, and it's
no. I didn't say the border wasn't a problem.
It's worse than it's been in years.
Yeah, because nobody can make any kind of policy to address it. Period. And I know Bob said that was a non-starter and all that, but they've been trying to come up with immigration policy forever. They tweak it all the time.
Yeah, I disagree with Bob on that. That Langford bill that was written, it's a good bill. Should have passed.
Yeah, and the guy you're voting for said don't pass it.
He did, and that's why it didn't pass. It's pretty obvious. Yeah, he wanted to run. No, I completely agree. The guy I'm voting for it's not 100% endorsement. He's better than Kamala Harris, and life was more peaceful around the globe. It goes back to a podcast you and I did a month or so ago, where
Yeah.
I do think world leaders think he is predictably unpredictable, and I think there's some merit to that.
It's just correlation or causation, right? And we'll disagree on which is which, right? I mean, okay. I mean, I don't know. I think we just see things in a different way when it comes to that. And we'll find out, right? Like, shit. I mean, but I want to go back to what you said. Why are people excited about this? And then this is why they are. I believe most of the people because I align with the Democratic platform complete. Like my belief system I hate so much of what the conservatives say they are right now. Hate it. I don't know how much I love a lot of the stuff over here. It's more just like, yeah, that's just how I think, right? Like I'm not passionate about the Democratic Party like I am the Green Bay Packers, if that makes sense. I don't Green Bay. I'm like, oh my God, like I will live and die, during football games 7 or 8 times. I'm not like that with the Democratic Party or the platform. I just like, oh yeah, I really find a lot of their principles and policies aligning with how I view the world through my worldview. The things that I care about, they seem to care about. The opposite, I have a visceral feeling about the other side, right? In a negative way.
A lot of your visceral feelings, though, against the other side, those would be people that I would suggest to you aren't really conservative. They're not really Republicans.
I've been like that since 2004. I've been like that for 20 years.
Man, 2004, the party wasn't near in the shambles it is now. So that was actually going to be the year that I threw out to say, look, this is back when we had balanced budgets. This is when we had fiscal conservatism. I mean, so yeah, if you didn't like it in 2004, you really don't like it.
That's when all the religion started creeping into it. Compassionate conservatism, right? And you saw how we all ended up in 2008 when Bush left. You said he was the second worst or first worst.
No, the worst president of my lifetime.
He was the worst. So I mean that's when I started to shift away from him. When you start to infuse this religion, but here's why Democrats are so excited. I think most of them, and I don't want to speak for all of them, I think most of them are so. And I will get crucified when I say I'm not as scared as a lot of them are about another 4 years of Trump. I'm not, and I think I have the privilege of saying that, right? I think his policies and his verbiage sort of doesn't directly impact me as a white heterosexual male. None of the things that he says personally attack who I am as a person. But I think a lot of people on the left, they were just hoping for something to stand up to Trump because everybody knew Biden couldn't do it. As good as a lot of people on the left thought his policies were, and there were a lot of people on the left that thought his policies were good, he could not adequately defend those policies. He could not adequately communicate those policies. He could not fight back when Trump would just flat out lie. Like Trump did, and nobody talks about this. The debate, Biden was shit, clearly. He's too old. He had to step aside. Trump lied the whole fucking time during that. He just lies all the time. And we've somehow accepted lying to be okay. Like, we're just like, that's just who he is. We just, let's sort of like peer through these words and then figure out what the truth might be over here. But, we just got to kind of sort through all the mumble that he says. He lies all the time. So I think the Democratic Party just wanted somebody who could stand up to that and give us some type of hope, right? Like, I don't know if they think she has a legitimate chance of winning, but man, the feeling is that she does. Like right now, like it's a neck and neck thing.
It's in which there's always a push. I think that's normal for there to be a push for her, and we know she set fundraising records and all of that. I just want to know, and I do not put this on Kamala Harris, and I don't put it on Donald Trump. I didn't put it on Joe Biden. I don't put it on anybody. But because I really believe, I'm not mad at them. I mean, if their job's to sell you something, they're going to say as few words as they can to get you to buy, right? They don't want to talk you out of it. But my frustration is on us, on who we elect and what we expect. I became very frustrated with some people at the RNC, Matt Gaetz, Shout out to Make Your Face Look Like a Cat. Matt Gaetz, very frustrating. He has zero clue how to govern. They kept showing videos of MTG, zero clue how to govern. That's not representative of my party, of what I believe, of my belief system. There's nothing about them that do it. Yet we send them to Washington, D.C., right? We send them to represent us. I think it's the same way with the president. Like, what I would like to hear from some of my friends on the left, because I know I can give you a big old list of things that I don't think Kamala Harris did very good at her time as a prosecutor in California, as a senator from California, or as a vice president, right? So I know what she didn't do good. I'm really curious to hear what she did well, right? Why she should get some support from my friends on the left, who do, some of them seem to be logical thinking. Some of you guys are complete fucking lunatics, but that's the same thing on the right, right? Some of you guys are like me, and you try to be really reasonable and look at both sides of an issue, and then some of you are fucking lunatics. But to the ones who try to be a little rational, I want somebody to tell me, okay, why will it not be really bad if she were to win? That's why, because it can't be just Donald Trump's going to be awful. It can't just be the weakest thing in the world. And I swear to God, if I see anybody else share it, I'm just going to lose my mind. The whole Project 2025. If you think Donald Trump is reading a 927-page document and going to follow it to a T, you have not paid attention to Donald Trump at all. Zero chance that's happening. He's not going to do it because he'd get bored. Not going to happen.
No, right? but I don't think
it's covered in such weak sauce.
I don't think he'll follow it to a T, but I also believe that there are people who worked for him in his previous administration who, and look, let's be honest. If we think Donald Trump did a lot of the governing when he was president, come on. Like, look at that dude. And just like the same as people who say that Biden was doing it. And I think that's kind of where I land on this. The people who connect to the Democratic platform, and this comes down, and I'm not saying this in a bad way or not, I think this is just fact of life. It's about what we as individuals value. Mm-hmm. I believe Republicans, and I hate to generalize this, they are more concerned about how policy affects them personally and their family personally.
Yeah, look at their way of life.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, their way of life. We say it all the time. The American way of life, the Republican way of life. We talk about that stuff out loud.
I think people, and this is me, so I don't want to speak for everybody who connects to the Democratic Party. We obviously care about how we live. I'm more concerned with how do these policies affect people who may not have as much of a agency as I do, who may not have the opportunities that I do, who may be extremely vulnerable. That's the way I look at when politicians speak about certain things and towards certain topics. How do they address the people affected by those specific topics? Is it a way of what can we do to help? Or is it let's hurt them up and move them out? Like, I think I think that's sort of where we as a culture, and we keep getting further and further apart on that. And it's not right or wrong. I think it's just, again, how it's a worldview situation. So for people on the left, they're excited about Vice President Harris because we all know Biden probably wasn't running anything, but we know the policies and the platforms that we value are still going to get pushed the same way. Now we just got somebody that can communicate that better and stronger.
For me, that's not the pitch I was looking to hear, but I want to go back to what you said because I think it's probably the best thing you said tonight that I agree with the most. And I think it's one of the most accurate depictions of what is different between the rational. Because you and I are different. Sometimes my friends on the right think that that I agree too much with you, but you and I are different. You do look at, and maybe this is what defines reasonable people on the left and reasonable people on the right. Hopefully, is you look at it as, I like the word you said, agency. Like, how will this affect people who don't have the same agency I do? These policies, these procedures. I look at it completely differently. I think that the best way to have achievement is limited government, limited involvement, more liberty, more freedom, more. And maybe that's because I'm a white dude, right? But to me, that is, I want the role of government in my life to be very, very small. Republicans, we used to believe that, right? I want there to be very limited government interaction, and I want to be left. I want it to be up to me to see what it, I can, achieve or not. I don't want a lot of governmental involvement, and I think that's okay to have those differences. What should government be to you? And I think landing on we're on different lily pads in the pond there, but that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. I think things like immigration, I think the big like boogabears that are out there in the narratives, right? The culture war stuff. Like, how has immigration directly affected you? And I'm not trying to, I'm just genuinely asking.
I have solved the immigration problem in an afternoon. And Bob Ney, our good friend, former U.S. congressman from the state of Ohio, was like, holy shit, Chuck, this is not a bad idea. And I own a small business. And so I know how tough it is to find staffing. And I have a lot of friends and people we do work with, and they can't find staffing. We do need immigrants here, right? That's a real thing. Now, we can't pay them slave labor. You can't do that. But we have more jobs than we have people. And this has been the trend since COVID. More jobs than we have human beings willing to work those jobs for whatever reason, right? Maybe everyone's independently wealthy besides us. But I think you could work with, when it refers to immigration, you could work with businesses and a 3-letter government agency. Lord knows we have plenty of them. And you call up, you apply online, you do whatever. Say, look, I need English speakers, non-English speakers, and an X amount. You have to prove what your average pay is for that job type. Again, you can't pay slave labor. But then you let the people come in and you tax them. And if those people leave for whatever reason, like they don't show up to work, boom, you go back to the website, say, hey, government, this person didn't show up. You've got something there to find workers. That's number one. Number two, the one thing we miss with immigration, because there's people coming here illegally, there's people coming here seeking asylum, and then there's people that are just immigrants. And those are 3 different conversations we have had since World War II. And I'm talking to my Republican friends here. Since World War II, if you could come to America, you were guaranteed, since the Holocaust, you were guaranteed a trial. If you were seeking asylum for political persecution, religious persecution, anything like that, if you could make it your way to America, your case would be heard here. And that is a lot of the backup that we have. And we don't tell that side of the story sometimes on the right. It's not fair. It's not fair when we have the discussion to only tell one side of it.
All right. So how has immigration affected you personally?
Me personally?
That was my question.
It hasn't me personally, but I've never been to Denver except for the airport. But I know that
I don't care about Denver. I don't care about Denver. I'm talking about like you and I. I don't care about Denver. I don't live in Denver. Now, immigrants, even immigrants who are not legal, they are taxed. They can work. They have a code. They are given a code. Taxes are pulled out of that. So this is another narrative. There's a narrative that illegal immigrants just don't pay any taxes. That's bullshit. 1, they pay sales taxes all the time. 2, if they are working, they have a code. Tax money is pulled out of that. All right, it is. So I think there's a lot of things about
hiring illegal immigrants legally, because I own a business. I've got to get driver's license, Social Security card, W-2s filled out. Explain to me how I can hire these illegal immigrants and them get a tax code. And then
they have a code. They have a code. There's a code by the federal government. You need to talk to the lady that directs the immigration services here in Jackson.
So you can get a code.
Yes.
And your employer can hire someone who is here illegally and not get in trouble.
If they are not, yes. Mm-hmm. If you are not a full U.S. citizen, you can have a right to work permit. Now they have to get that, right? Mm-hmm. They have to take the responsibility. So they have to have that. Like you can't just grab somebody who doesn't have a right to work permit. They have to get that. They may not be a full legal citizen. They may be an immigrant here, but they have a right to work permit. They have a code that comes with that. Tax
like on a visa.
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
If you sneak across the border, all right. So during COVID, and I could afford to do this because it was so much cheaper, my wife and I would go to Puerto Vallarta. Had a great time there. The driver that picked us up at the airport, we fell in love with him. His name's Rodrigo. We liked him. I went back a couple of months later, had him pick us up again, carry us around Puerto Vallarta. So I called a local attorney here in town, called James Crennis, and I said, look, This guy's gone to America illegally before. He said it's really hard now under Donald Trump. I want to bring him here legally to work for my company. He speaks English. He's a trustworthy person. All he wanted to do was make money for his family. They weren't getting all the stimulus and stuff like that there in Mexico. And the attorney told me, he's like, can't do it, man. Wrong kind of business. There's certain businesses you can get them here legally on a work visa. You can't in your business. Now, I was trying to do it the legal way. You're telling me there's a way I could have done that illegally?
Not illegally. No.
Well, if they were here illegally, then, some laws are being broken, right? Rodrigo used to break the laws coming here because he would tell us about it. He's like, yeah, you get in through California. You can't really do that now. It's much harder. He told the story. Like, he didn't hide anything. He's a good dude.
And now, I will say this. I do believe okay, let me clarify this. I do believe they have to be on a pathway to citizenship. Does that make sense?
It's a little different conversation than, crossing the border illegally.
But but listen, they're all crossing the border illegally. Then they get on a pathway to citizenship. Does that make sense? They've all crossed the border illegally. So the people who cross the border illegally, they're here, right? They got by there, and so they're here. Okay, you have to have and there's a tight window. Pathways to citizenship are very narrow, but you've got to have a pathway. If you got that pathway to citizenship, then you get on this road, so to speak, and then you can have all of those things. You may not be fully legal, right? But so yes, everybody illegally crosses. Not everybody.
All right, and this is a different conversation. I don't want to stay here for too long because I know we're wrapping it up. But I just want to. So we have a governmental agency somewhere in the country. You knock on the door. You walk in. You say, "Hey, I broke the law, but I would like to work towards getting my citizenship."
Mm-hmm.
And they help you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Most immigrants don't knowingly break the law. They think they are promised passage over the border. They are told by a lot of people who take advantage of them.
Sure.
That, hey, you can have a better life. I'll get you across. They have no idea what the laws are, the rules are, anything like that.
Right. It's probably being told we work with the U.S. government. We have a contract with them. Yeah, I'm sure. I can see that. It's just, and so I'm not trying to make light of this here, but we have other government. Like if you go in with a pound of marijuana to the police station, which is a government agency, and say, I want to turn this in. It's mine. I want to turn it in. Like you're going to jail. It's funny the laws that we enforce and the laws we don't. It's just odd to me. This sounds like a Republican thing to say. Either we have laws or we don't.
Okay, God.
Come on.
Yeah, Chuck. Like, no, it's not that. That's so basic. What is written in Ellis Island or Statue of Liberty somewhere? What does it say? You know the little phrase.
Maybe at one time we got.
Give me you're tired, you're weak, you're hungry. This. The entire country was built on this principle. Okay,
especially
so it's not like
it's different now.
You can't equate a pound of marijuana to a person who comes across the border trying to have a better life, fleeing violence. Like shit is so bad in Central America. Like
caused by the U.S. government in large part
aren't comparable. Those two, it doesn't matter why it's caused. It is what it is. Like, don't shift this. Okay. So like these two things aren't comparable. This is, we're talking about human beings, right?
Right.
So what you do, you just said we have more jobs than we have people.
Yes.
So if there is an illegal immigrant who says, hey, I want to be on a path to citizenship, of course you don't fucking send him to jail. You say, okay, how can we legally get you on a path to citizenship so you can take part in this country? You can help us. We can help you. Let's do that. Like that's not complicated. So most of these people, and it's not like, oh, I can see that. No, like this is real life. Most of the people the immigrants in West Tennessee who are not legal have come here because they were sold a raw deal by somebody. The shit was so bad in their country that they make it up here, and now they're here, and they're like, oh my God, this is way worse than we thought it would be. We can't drive. We can't vote. We can't get a line of credit. So what are our options? Right? So this is why you have these pathways to citizenship. And along these pathways, you can work. You can get taxes taken out of your check. Right? You are given a code before you are fully legal to be able to work. Like that's how most of the people get in here. But the narrative on the right is far different. Is they're here to take our way of life and murder and rape people. And that's just not reality.
I will concede that because I certainly agree with you. I do find it like I am having a hard time lining up this. And now, do I think that people coming here looking to work or a better way of life are taken advantage of by cartels and whoever else along the way? Yeah, probably. And I'm sure you're right about that. But the idea is we start off from an illegal point and then we work our way towards legal. We, as American citizens, we don't have that right in very many respects where, something starts off illegal now without going to, and I'm not saying lock them up. I'm saying maybe send them back. I'm saying maybe do something else. I mean, I like the idea of businesses and the government working together to get this done. That seems to make more sense to me.
So if they've been here 20 years, send them back?
And which is a tough one, right? Bob Nate tells a story of someone that was in his district, a child that was, a month old when her parents came across. She got a full ride to Ohio State at the time, full ride, academic ride to Ohio State. She was 18 years old, found out she was illegal, sent her back. It's tough. I mean, I hear you, right? This girl's an American for everything she's ever known. She had, her parents, she's got fake papers, fake documents. They got busted. They sent her back because she wasn't born here. She wasn't naturalized.
Yeah, that's crazy. It makes that doesn't make any common sense, and that's not a humane thing. And I think that's where you can easily draw this line between the two parties, and at least where they are today. I'm going to always side with the party who seems to have the more humane policies for people like that. Right, I am, because you know what? I haven't been impacted by illegal immigration. I would say most people in West Tennessee, 99.9% of them haven't been impacted by illegal immigration.
And that's true. And if this was the only thing the world was, then that would be a fair point. But like the country's a lot bigger than that. And to say that other areas have not been impacted by immigration, I know you didn't, but you said we haven't. So should we not care? Should we just wait it to affect us before we have opinions on it?
No, but I also think that it won't ever affect us the way it's been talked about, because that's the way it's been talked about isn't real, right? It's not accurate. Yes, it is affecting certain parts of the country, specifically along the border, obviously.
Mm-hmm. A lot of larger cities.
Yeah, a lot of larger cities, sure, right? But but even still, it's not like the vast majority of the country isn't really impacted by this. We've got to have a policy for it, though, no matter what. And I think that's sort of the differences in the way the approach.
We had a bipartisan policy, and it didn't go through. Eric Adams, check him out, the mayor of New York. It affected them pretty bad. He asked the federal government for help.
Mm-hmm. Well, but look, yes, it did. And New York they were getting bussed up probably by what, states like ours or Florida?
No, not ours. They didn't even make it this far. Governor Abbott of Texas, and then I think what's his face with the high heels, DeSantis was busing them as well. I
don't know if you've been to New York. Have you been to New York?
I have not.
Yeah, shit's tight up there.
Never have.
I mean, it's super tight. Like in fact, it's probably one of the most densely populated areas in the entire country. So like there's not a lot of space. And I get what you're saying. Yes, obviously it's a problem there. That's because states like us who probably could have worked with it, shipped them up there to an even smaller area. So of course they're going to have an issue. I think there's a way that we can do it. And of course, this isn't even about like immigration. But I do think it speaks to the differences in the parties, and it goes back to what you originally asked about Harris. I think people on the left tend to be concerned with collective humanity, maybe a little bit more than people on the right. And I don't think and I think people on the right would agree with that. And I don't know that wasn't meant to be a shot. I just think that's the way it is.
I do. Because I don't look at that as the government's role. I look at that as a person's role or a collective group of people or an organization. We talked about the homeless thing a few weeks back. I think it's the government's role to assist, but not to do. I still believe that. And again, we're just on different lily pads on the pond with that. I don't want government that big. I don't want government touching my life that much. Now, the Catholic Church, they do a lot of work with immigration and probably help with what you're talking about, these pathways to citizenship and stuff like that. So I can see these things existing from an organizational standpoint, and I can see it being important for an organizational standpoint. I don't know that I see that being something for the government to do. That's a little bit bigger government. Like, I don't know that I want government to be humane or inhumane. I don't know that I want it that big for that to be the, what it answers for my likings, at least. So yeah, you're probably right. We are different there.
Well, I think government, you can't be neutral. Government makes laws, right? And so the way you draft laws, you can't be neutral when you draft laws. Like, there's got to be some type of leaning one way or the other. You're going to be the hard-ass law and order person that drafts laws, or you're going to draft laws that have a little more bend to them where you can help people a little bit more rather than popping them on the hand and sending them back across the board, right? It's just it's a different approach, I think.
Yeah, give me the law. Like, as someone who has broken laws before, speeding, all kinds of stuff, right? Not perfect, man, but give me the laws versus give me the laws on paper versus the laws on, like, when we used to, take the silly putty and like do the newspaper thing on it where it's malleable. Give me the laws on paper.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah. When it comes to a government's role.
I'm just thinking, going back to our conversation about parental rights in Tennessee,
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, man, the laws on paper have fucked us pretty hard.
The laws on paper did fuck us pretty hard. And that's why I said then we have to make sure we know about the people that we elect, because laws on paper change all the time. Right? I'm not saying, these aren't the 10 commandments. Laws aren't 10 commandments, right? They're not carved into stone. You can change them. It's important for who we elect. But I think if they're on the books, they have to be enforced. Now, they need to be changed.
I think you misunderstood what I said.
Okay.
The people who write those laws, I want them to write them in a way that maybe bends a little bit more toward humanity than it does punitive measures. That's what I mean. So
we're still following the law. We can agree, though, no matter where the law comes from, even if it's like, okay, we're going to write this, but with space, if you've been here for 10 years, we're going to allow you a path that says, as long as that's on the books.
That's what I mean. That's
okay,
yeah.
That's what I'm on the same page. I thought you meant, right, when you said bend, I thought you said, okay, well, we're not going to enforce this. I'm like, then why do we even have them? But no, okay, we're closer to the same page than I understood.
All right, real quick before we close out, because we've gone way over. All right, who is Harris's VP pick? Assuming all this shit is smooth in Chicago, she officially accepts the nomination and all that. Who's her VP pick?
I mean, I keep seeing Mark Kelly, and Arizona kind of makes sense, but she's from California. It's Arizona, started kind of West Coast contingency. I think Ray Cooper makes the most sense in North Carolina, or Gretchen Whitmer. I believe that's her name, in Michigan. Yeah. Which now I've had political correspondents that I do some radio work with tell me, look, the country's not ready for 2 females right now.
I'm here for it. I think.
I know you are.
Yeah, no, but I think a lot of people are. I mean, women especially, right? Like, I think I'm not saying that's who I would pick. I would go with Kelly from Arizona. I think that's the. If Harris is going to be at the top of the ticket, him being right underneath her, I think that's the best shot of winning. Right?
I'm going to say this. As someone who follows Republican politics a little bit more, now I hate Fox News and stuff like that, right? But I'm talking about who just tends to say, okay, well, these people may be in place for this. This may be the VP pick. Didn't see J.D. Vance coming, even though everybody talked about it. I think that was a huge screw up. But I don't look a ton into the Democrats. I knew Gavin Newsom. Like, I knew a handful of them. I thought, okay, this will be the guy. Man, What Whitmer has done in Michigan, she took over a $6 billion budget deficit. And in 6 years, there's a 17 or $20 billion budget surplus. Ray Cooper in North Carolina, the Shapiro guy, the governor of Pennsylvania, there are some big time Democratic governors that, I mean, I thought the party was in shambles. Maybe not.
No, the top is. The leadership of it and the way that they process these things out isn't super organized. There's a contingent of young, strong, and I would even say we hear, because the right does this really well, are the fringe people from the left, AOC, Bernie, who I personally like Bernie. There are a lot of sharp, moderate Democrats who are running Midwestern states and doing a hell of a job. And there's a good crop coming up behind. So I would be cool with Whitmer and Harris on one ticket. I think it would be really fun to watch this play out. I think the winning ticket is her and Kelly. I mean, the best, not winning, but the one that has the best chance to win.
The best chance, even more so than Cooper in North Carolina or Shapiro, another guy in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, huge state. To if you're talking electoral votes, if he's well liked in Pennsylvania.
Yes, but I heard people say that he's Jewish, and we know how fraught that is right now.
That's going to really hurt them in Michigan, right? You remember the Biden vote, people writing in whatever they wrote in certain parts of Michigan. Yeah, that may be tough for him.
So
especially in the Democratic Party.
With that, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see how this plays out. And we didn't really get into the process as much tonight. Next week, or in a week and a half, I'm going to have the president of the Madison Area Democratic Women on to talk about the process. She's verbally supportive of the process and the way the DNC handled this. So I think we'll have a good discussion about it. I didn't like the process of it. Or I shouldn't quote her on that yet. I know she's very supportive and Vice President Harris being the nominee. But I don't know. I shouldn't say she was supportive of the process.
I wonder if it's one of those deals. I would have landed here too, but I wish would have gotten here differently. Maybe it's one of those deals.
Possibly. I don't think I wouldn't have landed there if this was an open primary and I would have voted in it. I would not have. What's that?
Not if you read her record, Kamala Harris's record. Nothing about it would make you think presidential. Not one thing. Nothing she did in the Senate, nothing she's done as vice president, and nothing she did as a prosecutor in California. Not one thing.
What do you? I don't know. What do you mean? What did she do in the Senate that's not presidential? Or what did anybody do in the Senate?
Yeah, she was only in the Senate for a short time before she made a presidential run, right? So she was kind of a firecracker in there. One of the things that I've seen, and I've tried to find some more bills, like she didn't do a whole lot of sponsorships and stuff. She had some votes, but it was pretty much along party lines. This whole immigration thing has been a big thing for her. It was that way in California. It was also that way in the Senate, where she wanted to defund ICE is not the right word, but get rid of ICE and customs. So, she is very pro immigration. Immigration is going to be the number one topic. That was a topic.
But I think it's fair. Like, ICE wasn't being used strictly at the border, right? Like, I think there was. I'm totally fine with her voting to. I don't want to say not get rid of ICE, but I think shifting the way that program was run in the Trump administration, absolutely things needed to change. No, there was tremendous overreach, in my opinion, with that group. So I have no problem with that.
This will be the election. Immigration will be the election from both sides. We'll see, where the American people land. But I think it is the biggest topic of this, because you have the person who's in charge of immigration, and you have the candidate who ran in 16, 20, and now 24 on immigration.
Real quick, guess what the percentage is of illegal immigrants bringing across fentanyl across the border?
The percentage of illegal
of all the fentanyl confiscated at the border, the percentage of that fentanyl confiscated at the border, what is the percentage of illegal immigrants carrying it?
Oh, I'm going to guess it's low, because I know the majority is by American citizens. I do know that. So I'm going to say 30%. 1%. Now,
99% of fentanyl is from American citizens.
Which is true. Now, the majority of fentanyl comes in our ports in California. right? People, Americans being bought and paid for that work on the
that's
dock,
fine.
loading those cargo ships. Well, but we don't have the right fentanyl argument. We do think it's coming in from Mexico, but it's not. A lot comes from Canada. The majority comes in from California, like from those docks and in those big cargo containers. Like, we never have an authentic discussion about, not you and I, but I'm talking about America as a policy, because that's where it's coming from. That's where it's coming from.
But that's wrapped in to the immigration conversation, and that's unfair. And there's a lot of stuff like that that's wrapped into that. So if this does come down to immigration, people need to make sure they know what the fuck is going on about immigration.
Yeah, good luck there.
All right, man. We'll close it out. I hate, you know how we are, man. We talk really well and we disagree, and that spurs other avenues of conversation. I wish we would talk a little more about Biden. Yeah. I am glad he stepped down. I appreciated his message. He did the right thing for his party and the right thing for the country, I believe, because I believe it gives the country an opportunity now to vote in a competitive election. And it was not a competitive election.
6 months, 5 months.
Yes. So I think as all citizens, as voters, that's all we can ask for, right? I think just because now it does feel like voices are being heard on both sides. I think with Biden staying in, this was a one-sided race the whole time. I don't think half of the country felt they had an option. And now I think they do. And so I think that's good, regardless. Like, you want competition in elections, especially one for the president of the United States.
I completely agree there, by the way, right? You got to make them better. We got, at some point, hopefully we'll get to policy talk. Maybe not, but boy, I'd love to.
Yeah, be good. All right, later.